Hello, everyone. I'm Catherine Cryer.
And I'm John Scott. Welcome to a very special Fox Files as we look at the real Diana. Later in the program, we'll have an up-to-the-minute report on the investigation into Diana's death.
But first, my exclusive interview with Diana's mother and brother. We take you behind the gates of Althorp, Diana's family home. We'll talk about Diana's life, how her family coped this year since her death. An intimate look at the life and death of a princess.
And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in.
She just transmitted joy. The last time I saw her was on her birthday last year, and she was just really radiant and happy, and everyone around her was just so lifted by having her around. She was a force for good, a life enhancer, really.
Diana would be snatched from the world on August 31st, 1997. Like the generation before, who remember where they were when President Kennedy was assassinated, few will forget where they were when they learned Princess Diana had died. It happened in this Paris tunnel. The driver of her car slammed into a concrete post, killing Diana, her companion Dodi Fayed, and the driver. Diana could not be saved. Not by the power of the royal family, nor by the privilege of her Spencer upbringing. At the Spencer Althorp estate, Diana's brother, Earl Charles Spencer, talked exclusively to Fox Files about that awful night.
Tell me about receiving the phone call about the accident.
I was in Cape Town, and it was the middle of the night, and my telephone went, and it was a man who lives in a property on the estate here where I used to live. And he called me and said, one of the Sunday newspapers here just called me and said that your sister and Dodi Fayed have been in a car crash in Paris, and that it's very serious.
Diana, Princess of Wales, has been seriously injured in a car accident in Paris.
And I turned on the television, and I just wasn't sure what was going on at that stage, because I was flicking between two news stations. And the one thing that seemed certain was that Diana had survived, because both were saying that they had eyewitnesses who had seen her walk away. And I was thinking, well, I think she'll be okay, and I'll give her a call and get to the hospital when I can, next day or whatever. And then my elder sister came on the line, Sarah, and she said, look, I'm sorry, but it does look really serious. They say she's got brain damage. And then I rang my other sister, Jane, whose husband works at Buckingham Palace, and she'll know exactly the status of everything. And she said, oh, hang on, Robert, her husband, he's on the other line right now to the ambassador. And then she stopped talking, and Robert said, I just heard him say, oh, no. And then Jane said, I'm afraid that's it, she's dead.
She died at 4 a.m. after going into cardiac arrest. That, according to doctors at the hospital in Paris, Diana, Princess of Wales, is dead.
And then I was alone in my house, apart from my 4 children, and they were asleep. And I stayed out really in shock, really, I suppose. And then my 3 little girls came skipping through in the morning. And I said, look, I've got some awful news, I'm afraid. I'm afraid Aunt Diana's dead. And then the middle one just looked at me and she said, but not in real life, Daddy, you know, with a big smile on her face. And it was just the most awful thing.
Diana came home to a nation in shock and a brother in despair.
We've all lost people we love, and there is a time when it's not real.
Yeah.
When did it become real to you that you'd never see her again?
When I saw her coffin, it was in a chapel in St. James's Palace in London, and that did bring it home. That was a couple of days later.
It's clear that Diana was the people's princess. Thousands of people waited in line for hours to sign the condolence books, and London became covered in a mountain of flowers left in tribute to Diana.
When I came in for the funeral, I was overwhelmed with flowers in front of Kensington Palace, across this city. It was absolutely extraordinary. What was the personal emotional reaction to that?
All my family were amazed by the outpouring of emotion after Diana's death, and it's a difficult thing to understand, really. I mean,
it was very un-British, most people said.
Very un-British, but it almost it was almost some spiritual reaction, I think. I mean, there's not a huge amount of organised religion in this country anymore. And I just wonder if somehow people had to connect with a part of themselves that was probably dormant. And there they were, this woman who really must have seemed as far away from death as anyone on the planet, being taken like that, made people think very deeply, I think, about their own mortality.
It is sort of the wrong order when somebody dies young. We all expect to bury our parents, however painful that is, but we don't expect to bury our children.
Princess Diana's mother, Frances Shand Kidd, talked exclusively to Fox Files in her only interview since Diana's death.
Were you at all surprised at the extraordinary world response when she died?
I joined the world in being surprised by the world. It was unbelievable. There aren't words to describe it. So I find enormous comfort by being in Kensington Palace Gardens, the proceedings 3 nights before the funeral, with literally thousands of people. Comforting, sharing. We were sharing. A very deep hurt. But I think that far too little's been said about what people all over the world gave to her. They nourished her. They made her smile. They gave us strength.
The overriding theme is that these people all thought they knew her, and that she was a personal friend. Now, in a way that's very strange, but in another way, that's another great tribute to Diana, that she had that effect.
An effect that was never more apparent than the day of the funeral. Millions of British citizens lined the streets of London to say goodbye to their princess. Charles Spencer would feel the grief of the nation as he, Princes Charles, William, Harry, and Philip accompanied Princess Diana's cortege along the 3-mile funeral route.
Charles, I was here when you and the 4 princes came along behind the coffin, and I heard the wails from people. I couldn't talk. I cannot imagine what it must have been like.
It was definitely the worst experience of my life, walking behind that coffin, walking in a line behind my sister's body in front of the world. And that the overwhelming feeling I have was that it was walking down a tunnel of grief. But really what was the most difficult part was feeling everyone's grief weighing down on you and not being able to look right or left to see where it was coming from. But the feeling was extraordinary. And then every step was different. Every block of the crowd reacted differently. Some were totally silent. Some were wailing and screaming. Others applauded, and it was very traumatic, actually. It was just appalling.
The young princes, your nephews, were extraordinary.
Yeah, I was very, very... obviously, you're concerned about how they're going to deal with the whole thing. But there's nothing you could really do, you know? It's so public. I mean, you just got to keep walking.
It's a difficult call to make, but had it been your choice, would you have wanted them to go through that?
My view always was that if they wanted to do it or thought it the right thing to do, then I'd be there to support them. And it was a very humbling experience, really, to be between 2 young men, very young men, showing such dignity and courage. It was extraordinary, really.
Extraordinary, a word many would use to describe Charles Spencer's eulogy at Diana's funeral.
I stand before you today, the representative of a family in grief, in a country in mourning, before a world in shock.
Finally, Princess Diana began the 100-mile-long trip to her final resting place at Altrincham. Once again, her countrymen were lined up 10 deep to pay their respects.
She had gone from being seen as somebody from a privileged background, marrying into an even more privileged one, into being somebody who people could universally identify with. And I think that was really such a tribute to Diana that everybody turned out for her funeral.
For the last time, Diana came through the gates at Althorp. In a private family ceremony, Diana was laid to rest here on this island at the Spencer home.
She's at home in a peaceful, beautiful environment surrounded by water. That's the key. She's buried like a national, international heroine.
Was Diana's death an accident? Is she really buried at Althorp? These are just a few of the questions to come up since Diana died.
And Earl Spencer answers them as my exclusive interview with him and his mother continues.
In death, as in life, Diana makes news like no other woman in history. And 1 year later, people are still wondering about the accident that killed her.
Are there questions you will always have, such as, could the paramedics have saved her? Were there any last words?
I'm absolutely convinced that the impact of the crash was such that there was no hope at all of Diana surviving it. And I realised that the French doctors did all they could. And my family and I are very grateful to them for that. As for last words, well, again, the impact was such that it wasn't possible for any coherent words to have been said.
Earl Charles Spencer wants to set the record straight on rumors that have surfaced since his sister's death, like the reports that Dodie and Diana planned to marry.
Were you surprised when the romance between her and Dodie made headlines?
I was very surprised, actually. I never met him, but I gather he was a very nice man. And I think they had a lovely summer together. And I think to speculate beyond that is ridiculous. None of my family ever heard her mention the possibility of anything long-term.
Diana always had a love-hate relationship with the British press, and it became a focal point in her brother's heartfelt eulogy.
There is no doubt that she was looking for a new direction in her life at this time. She talked endlessly of getting away from England.
Was it the press, the paparazzi, that would drive her away?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she was naive enough to think there wouldn't be any press in the States, but it's very difficult for Americans to understand the way our newspapers operate over here. Here we've got somewhere roughly the size of Texas with 13 major newspapers all at each other's throats trying to get the most sensational story to stay in business. And they're national papers, and they're pretty ruthless. And the truth tends to be the first casualty, and it used to drive her to despair.
Diana's mother, Frances Shand Kidd, spoke exclusively to Fox Files about her daughter's death. With the memory still so painful, Shand Kidd would only talk a bit about what it was like being the mother of the most famous woman in the world. Were you, as a mother, surprised at where life took her?
I think any mother would be surprised. I was.
Did you ever worry about it?
Oh, yes. A lot. I mean, you have the eternal maternal instincts, but to a degree, whatever your children do, when they fledge, you're maternally redundant in one sense, but you're always, you hope, a long-stop friend. But their decisions are their own.
That has to be very frightening not to be able to protect. Were there times you wanted to?
Yes. I wanted privacy for her, very often, when she wasn't working. But that wasn't to be.
I don't think she ever understood why her genuinely good intentions were sneered at by the media, why there appeared to be a permanent quest on their behalf to bring her down.
Did you worry when you wrote the comments about the press and the eulogy about your own dealings with the press?
Oh, I knew there'd be repercussions. I mean, I know how they operate. And, but that wasn't an issue. I still had to say what was true.
She would want us today to pledge ourselves to protecting her beloved boys, William and Harry, from a similar fate. And I do this here, Diana, on your behalf. We will not allow them to suffer the anguish that used regularly to drive you to tearful despair. And beyond that, on behalf of your mother and sisters, I pledge that we, your blood family, will do all we can to continue the imaginative and loving way in which you were steering these two exceptional young men.
What about the call for the Spencer influence to continue in the boys' lives, and you put it so their souls could sing openly as Diana would have wanted?
The key Spencer influence on those boys has already been done, in that Diana was their mother for 13 or 15 years, respectively. Not Spencer influence, it's really Diana influence.
The pledge in the eulogy was, "We will continue this." And that is very difficult to do, isn't it?
I have a sister, Jane, who goes almost every week to watch Harry in his football or rugby or cricket matches. She goes to every match he plays in. My family visit them a lot. Beyond that, I'm not prepared to go because it's a confidential relationship. No, I think that my family stuck very much to the pledge that I made on their behalf.
It seems, though, that your nephews have developed whether a closer relationship with Prince Charles or even a different. You know, the world seems to notice more play and more intimacy. Are you happy with their lives now?
Well, to be honest, it's not my place to judge their relationship with their father. I know they both love their father very much, and I think that's natural and wonderful.
If you can say that any good came from Diana's death, it's that in the past year, Princes William and Harry have been left alone by the British press that hounded their mother.
The main worry I have now is that it seems very unfair on William, that everyone's going to look on him to be a male Diana. I think that people should let him be himself, and they can only do by giving him a lot of space while he's young to develop himself.
It seems the press is giving William and Harry that space. They are only photographed at select times set up by Buckingham Palace, and to their uncle, they seem to be getting through the grief.
They're two exceptional boys. I think they've coped with the past year extraordinarily well.
She was the people's princess. It's sometimes hard to remember she was someone's mother, someone's sister, and they feel her loss every day.
What do you miss the most?
Well, I miss her on two levels. I miss her obviously very deeply as my sister. But I really also can see that the world's not really the same without her. I think that she just gave so much to the world, you know? And I feel very sad that that's gone forever.
We're a smaller place.
It's a less happy place, isn't it, I think.
Diana's two sons plan to mark the anniversary of her death privately with their father at Balmoral, the royal family estate. And you've heard the criticism. A lot of people say Earl Spencer is cashing in on his sister's death by opening the museum. Did you get that impression?
No, I didn't. He said the books will be open, anyone can see where the money is going. And instead, in response to public demand, he has created this lovely, very intimate place for people to pay their respects.
Althorp, at 550 acres, the vast estate is larger than Monaco.
My family have farmed here since 1486 and lived here since 1508. And it does give you just feel you belong here.
500 years later, the Spencers are still here, and it's still a working farm. This was Grandpa's house to the young Charles and Diana Spencer. Today, Charles Spencer is the 9th Earl Spencer to call Althorp home, a home that most of us would call a mansion.
Is there a real sense of history for you? Do you feel an identification for all the people in this room?
Very much so. I think when I took over here, it was very reassuring to see generation after generation of my family around me, almost sort of encouraging me.
Upstairs, the walls are lined with portraits of Spencer family members, including Diana. Althorp is also where Charles Spencer decided to bury his sister.
Water was the element that she loved most in the world, and it's just such a perfect spot. It's so tranquil. It's away from the house enough, and yet it's near enough for it still to be very much a central part of the park and house.
This is Diana's final resting place. On this island, in the middle of the estate.
How quickly did you come to the decision that this was the spot?
Wasn't a quick decision. In fact, what happened was I was very unhappy about her being buried up in the local church. Somebody could get in there and do something appalling. And I just thought, well, it's got to be in the park.
Tell me what I'm seeing here.
The urn at the end is a sort of family tradition. Ever since the 16th century, we've erected urns whenever a major event has happened in the park or whatever. And Diana's buried in the middle of that island.
There are some that have seen the urn and think that she was cremated.
No, that's not true. No, this is the urn's more a symbol, really.
With all of the theories about so many different things, there is also the conspiracy theory that she's not there.
I swear on my life, my children's lives, that that is where Diana's buried, and I think it's the perfect place for her to have been buried in.
Did the two of you play her?
Oh yeah, it's a lovely area, yes. No, this has got some very good memories. She loved it here.
How often do you come down?
Well, I come here quite a lot, actually, as you can imagine. And I bring my children down here. And I also, you know, sit by the temple or just come here and think, really.
This 19th century temple is now a memorial to Diana.
We just totally altered it to be a fitting memorial to Diana. And then I wanted to capture Diana's beauty and elegance in a profile of her. It's black marble against white.
Did you pick out the silhouette?
Yes, and I thought the hair being slightly like that made it less classical and more modern, really. And she was a modern person.
In June, the Earl had a concert at Althorp for the official opening of the grounds. It will cost the public about $17 to enter. Charles Spencer says this money will go to upkeep and charity, but there are those who believe he's personally profiting.
To think that somebody could profit from their sister's death is so beyond the pale, really, isn't it? I mean, I'll just never do it.
He wants to honor his sister. And to do so, he has converted the 18th century Althorp horse stables into a museum devoted to his sister's life.
You were talking earlier about really wanting people to understand Diana as a Spencer. So tell me about this room.
Well, this room is really setting Diana in context as a female member of my family. We're lucky enough to have had so many special, strong, independent, beautiful women over the 500 years that I just wanted to highlight just a few of them to see the strands that almost came together in Diana.
Who is this on the end? Because I see a distinct resemblance to Diana.
Yes, well, that's my grandmother, my father's mother, Cynthia Spencer, and very much revered in this area.
Charles Spencer says his sister's childhood was filled with many good times.
How did you pick out this thing?
Well, some things were obvious, like the pastel portraits of her as a little girl. That was no problem. And her tuck box from school. The great love of her childhood, really, were all her cuddly toys. We've got one of them there. There were dozens of them, in fact. We just wanted to give just a snapshot of a very ordinary early childhood, really, in so many ways.
The royal wedding room.
There were millions of people that watched the wedding. You know, again, did you expect it to be the kind of world event it turned out to be?
No, not at all. It was amazing, really. I didn't know it would be like that at all, but, you know, this wedding dress is a sort of one of the most recognized pieces of clothing in the world, I imagine.
This room I was so taken with because this captures really who she became, didn't it?
This is a very important room. This is dedicated to her charities. And I think what we try to do is we have 3 video screens all running at the same time to just get the essence of what her charity work was about. Oh, it came very naturally. I think, when I said it in my eulogy, in fact, you know, she could understand the suffering of these people.
Life is mostly froth and bubble. 2 things stand like stone. Kindness in another's trouble, courage in your own.
She really did genuinely want to help.
This room, I think, will take many people aback.
Yes, I believe these are the 2 largest display cases in Britain of their kind. And really what I wanted to do was to get a feeling of celebration, of Diana's glamour, after the very moving room where you're dealing with the funeral and the tribute, etc., to come in here and just remember, hey, I remember her wearing that, or didn't she wear that at such and such, and everything's set in context again.
It's wonderful that you have put the photographs with each of the dresses so that people can make that recollection.
She had an amazing repertoire of tastes, really, and that's what this room captures. This exhibition is Diana, a celebration of her life. For someone so elegant and beautiful, she actually had quite a basic belly laugh, and that to me is Diana, you know, that magical enjoyment of life, really.
An estimated 152,000 of Diana's fans visited Althorp this summer. Earl Spencer says the money not needed for operating costs will go to his sister's charities.
The first time we saw her, she was just a 19-year-old kindergarten teacher. Lady Diana Spencer was the English Rose who captured the heart of the future king as well as the world. We know what happens next. A fairy tale wedding, 2 sons known as the heir and the spare, a humiliating public divorce, a car accident that would stun the world. But what was Diana like as a child, a student, a sister?
Were the two of you pals? You and Diana?
Yes, we were, yeah. I mean, we were thrown together, and as with any children who are thrown together, there are pal times and fighting times. But, I mean, that's the same the world over, I guess.
At the same time, Diana was also very protective toward her little brother.
Diana told me recently that one of her earliest and most painful memories is of the hearing me crying and crying and crying in a room down the corridor and not being able to come and comfort me because she was just too terrified of the dark corridor to come and get me, and that traumatized her.
But they are mostly happy childhood memories for Charles.
Describe for me what the days were like.
Well, the upbringing was one of privilege, although at the time it was a normal upbringing for us because that's all we knew. Endless parkland and grounds and swimming pools.
What did she want to be when she grew up at that age?
When she was young, she wanted to be a dancer. And in particular, I think she wanted to be a ballet dancer. But in her teens, she just grew too tall, and then she turned to...
Cherish our childhood photographs and home movies. Charles Spencer is no exception. He's opened the Spencer family photo albums and movie vault to Fox Files for a look at Diana as a young girl.
Charles Spencer pored over his personal home movies and lovingly chose these images which captured Diana's childhood.
So there is a lot of the swimming, a lot of the dancing, and the aspects about her that made her special as a child, the fact that she would automatically sort of make gestures and strike poses, and she was a natural performer. And I wanted to get that across.
In the stables he's transformed into a museum, Charles shares some of his favorite memories.
Well, we start with Diana's christening and various members of the family arriving.
And that must be Diana.
That was Diana in the pram, yeah. My father famously said that she'd have won any baby contest if he had entered her, because she was so beautiful as a baby. This is Diana's first birthday party. Various children who we grew up with running around. And Diana wasn't walking at this stage, I don't think.
She's trying to start walking.
Yes.
Now, what have we here?
This is winters in Norfolk on the East Coast, always very cold. And,
How beautiful.
Yeah, stunning. And there's Diana in a polka dress. I think it's a Hungarian thing. My father was always traveling and bringing back these things from around the world. I love this little bit of her running around like a little bee almost, just backwards and forwards. And this is a coat he bought Diana from a trip to Russia. Very thick Siberian thing. In fact, my father came back from that trip with a beard. And the only time I ever saw him bearded, Diana went, "Take that thing off." And this is us as children.
And is this a yellow bathing suit?
Yeah, I'm afraid that's the infamous yellow frilly swimming trunks, yeah. But that's the 4 of us playing in the pool with the girl in the black is a family friend, but there's my 3 sisters and I in the pool otherwise.
Which is which?
Jane is the shorter one, and Sarah's the one with the very short hair. And obviously Diana's the one in the green. She was a happy little girl, really. I mean, she had, she was very thoughtful as well. She could be quite pensive sometimes, but you can see from these films how full of energy she was. And also, you can see the star quality, really, in her. The way she just reacted to the camera.
When you look back at these pictures of the two of you, what do you think about it?
Well, it was a shock to me, really, because it took me back to how it was always, you know, Charles and Diana was growing up together. Not in any way belittling my two sisters' relationship with her, but it was always us two together.
The shot we see here, seeing some of this footage, was really for an audience, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it captures Diana's sort of exuberance, her vitality, as much as anything we've got on film. You get pretty much every style of dancing in this sequence, but what you get really is a little girl really enjoying herself, confident about her gracefulness and enjoying dance and swimming. They were her two real passions as children.
When you look at the home movies and these photos from the Spencer family album, you see a very normal little girl. A girl who knew what it was to have fun. A girl who had her awkward teenage phase. A girl who grew up to be a beautiful princess and touched the whole world.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question, but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind. Hang it on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoos and memories and dead skin on trial. For what it's worth, it was worth all the while. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. Something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Correspondent Catherine Herridge has been covering the investigation into Diana's death for a year now. She's standing by in Paris with the latest. Catherine?
John, we're at the Alma Tunnel, the place where Diana and Dodi's Mercedes crashed. The investigation into their death is supposed to be top secret. The Fox Files has confirmed important information about the case and where it stands today.
Fox Files met with surprisingly stiff resistance from hotel security and Paris police this week outside the Ritz, where the couple spent their final hours. This reaction comes as high-level Ritz employees, including its president, were questioned by the French investigating judge.
Well, I think what went on in the Ritz on the night in question is a matter which the judge is going to look further into.
Remember, Dodi's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, owns the Ritz. And although his spokesman says he stands by his employees, in an interview with Fox Files, he also distances Mr. Al-Fayed from responsibility.
Frank Klein is the president of the Ritz. He runs the place, you know. I mean, Mohammed was at home in Oxted and a long way away.
It's been proven that Henri Paul was too drunk to drive on August 31st. But was there also a problem with the car? Sources say that the airbags in the Mercedes may have inflated prematurely, blocking the driver's view. Plus, previous drivers had complained about the car's brakes. A key question is, did anyone at the Ritz that night know about these concerns?
The camera was taking pictures. There were ones that were going for closer shots and back out, and just taking some different angles, front, back, side.
10 paparazzi are still under investigation for not helping, which is against French law, and for involuntary homicide.
If they have broken the law, then they should suffer the consequences.
2 lawyers for photographers in the case now fear that their clients may have to stand trial. Investigators believe a white Fiat Uno collided with the Mercedes seconds before the crash. Authorities have yet to find the car or its driver.
I mean, that is odd, and it is hard to see how the judge can weave a coherent story out of what happened with that big missing link.
They may have to. Officially, authorities are still searching. Unofficially, legal sources tell Fox Files they've given up.
My client's loss of memory is almost total from the time of the departure from the Ritz.
But Trevor Rees-Jones may be very important to investigators describing what happened at the hotel. And just this week, Mohammed Al-Fayed seems to have abandoned his theories of a large conspiracy and has narrowed his accusations to the one man who lived to tell. Al-Fayed now claims that Rees-Jones and fellow bodyguard Kes Wingfield are responsible for his son's death because they did not follow proper security protocols. Rees-Jones' French lawyer Christian Courtil told Fox Files that Al-Fayed is, quote, paranoid, unquote. And now Rees-Jones has left his job with Dodi's dad and retreated to his home nearly 200 miles north of London.
I'd like everyone to appreciate this August will be a very difficult time for myself, my family, and for all the families that have been involved in this tragic accident.
That's all for this special edition of Fox Files. I'm Catherine Cryer. Join us again next week.
I'm John Scott. From all of us at Fox Files, good night.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question, but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind, hanging on a shelf in good health and good